Hi, everybody. My name is Nick PHAN, and I'm the Artistic Director of Collaborative Arts Institute of Chicago and one of the regular hosts of Heard Over the Piano, CAIC's online discussion series about all things art song. As always, please let us know if you have any technical issues by dropping a note into the Facebook comments, and we will do our best to address them. Also, please let us know if you have any questions for our guest tonight. If you do, also put those in the Facebook comments, and I will do my best to get those across to our distinguished guest. Welcome back for season 2 of Heard Over the Piano. Today's episode guest is 2021 Collaborative Works Festival artist, pianist Yasuko Oura. In case you aren't familiar with Yasuko's work yet, she's performed in venues like Carnegie Hall's Weil Hall, Alice Tully Hall, Merkin Hall. She's also co-director of chamber music at Bethany, and she's also on staff at the Lyric Opera of Chicago and Chicago Opera Theater, and she's on the faculty of Northwestern University. Yasuko, if you want to join me, we can have a chat.
Hello.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. Thanks so much for doing this.
My pleasure.
It's so funny. We worked so hard last week, and then we're thinking, oh, we can relax, but we have this to do. I forgot about it until the last minute. So thank you.
Yeah, it's nice to be here.
How are you doing?
I'm okay. Yeah, last week was crazy.
Yeah, you had a lot going on last week, right? You were playing shows at Lyric and also did this concert, which was no mean feat because it was a difficult program.
Right. Yes. But you had many concerts to sing too.
Sure. I don't know. I always feel like singers, it's a little bit less complicated than what the pianist has to do.
Wow. Okay. I think the opposite. I feel like we just wiggle fingers and you have to like stand there and present. And I don't know.
That's so funny. I mean, the grass is always greener, right?
Yes.
So this is a great chance for our audience to get to know you a little bit. So do you mind just starting with some basic information and just telling us a bit about yourself? You know, where did you grow up? Where did you study? How did you get into playing the piano? How did you get into singing and playing for singers?
Right. Well, so I was born in Japan. I was born in Kyoto, Japan. It's a beautiful city. And because of my father's work, I came to the States when I was 12. So back in the 80s, Japanese economy was booming and a lot of Japanese companies were opening up, like factories and companies in the States. And so my father's, the company he worked for, not his company, transferred him to Chattanooga, Tennessee to start this new factory. So I came from Japan to Chattanooga, Tennessee. That was my entry point. And, back in the 80s, I didn't speak any English. Now Chattanooga is it's a pretty cool city. It's very cosmopolitan, but back then it wasn't. And so we were like the very first Asians to ever enter that town. And, people looked at me like I was like, like alien, like I seen like ET. Anyway, so fast forward, then I become very Americanized and I decided to stay in the States, even though my father's transferred back to Japan. And so I decided to stay here for college. I went to Oberlin. And that's where I met my husband, lots of like cool friends that I'm still great friends with. And it was at Oberlin that I decided that I wanted to pursue collaborative piano more. I got to make music with a lot of great friends at Oberlin, and I just felt like I would enjoy, collaborative piano a lot more than solo piano. The idea of locking myself in the practice room for hours and hours just to play some solo music once, on stage, versus constantly making music with other people and constantly performing and constantly just, doing things was just so much more fun. So I decided to pursue degrees in collaborative piano. So I went to Juilliard and got my master's and doctorate there. And it was probably while I was studying with Margot Garrett that I sort of fell more in love with making music with singers and the, all the aspects of vocal collaborative music. And So yeah, I sort of decided to just kind of focus in more on the vocal music and started working for various, voice teachers, spent hours playing for voice lessons and just getting to really understand singers, how they make music, sound, diction, languages, styles, all of that. Started working for opera companies, just working my way up. And I don't know, here we are.
That's quite the story. So did you study piano in Japan before you came over, or did you start your studies over here?
Oh, no, no. Oh, no. I started when I was like 3 or 4 years old. My mother wanted me to play the piano. She wanted to play the piano, but she was born, the year the war ended, as in like World War II, which was a
Mhm.
big deal in Japan because we surrendered unconditionally. Anyway, so back then, cost of an upright piano could have bought a house. It was just impossible. And so she settled for a violin, and she actually, continued and like would play in community orchestra, and it was actually kind of cool. But when a little girl was born, she was like, my daughter will play the piano. And so she said that she asked me if I wanted to play the piano when I was 3 or 4. And I guess I said, yes, sure. And she made me practice every day. So it wasn't until I was in Chattanooga and I went to Swanee Music Festival when I was, I don't know, 13, 14, I can't remember. And I met this cellist. It's always cellist in my life. I'm married to a cellist. Anyway, and he said that he loves music. And I said, how is that possible? You mean your mom doesn't make you play cello? And he's like, no, I love it. And that's sort of when it sunk in that, oh, I actually enjoy this. I actually love it. It's not just because my mom makes me. Anyway, so I had that little bit of a, I don't know, maybe a typical Asian, I don't know, upbringing, like that love-hate relationship with music a little bit.
Yeah.
But now, I do it because I love it and I want to do it.
Amazing. Um, so was it a giant, I mean, it sounds like there's a lot to learn once you make the switch from playing just piano solo and piano chamber music and instrumental music and moving to working with singers. Was that a hard switch for you, or did you just dive right in and love all of it? Or
I mean, it was intimidating for sure. I mean, there was so much to learn: languages, diction, repertoire, art songs, arias. Yeah, I mean, I'm still learning, but it was, yeah, I mean, it was hard and I didn't think I would ever get there, you know? But you just keep at it. And I remember, when I was studying at Juilliard, Margot Garrett would say things like, oh yes, I'm working with this German tutor, or, like she just continued to work on her languages and her expertise. Like it just never ended. And I just thought, okay, well, if Margot's still taking, language lessons, I mean, then I guess I should just keep going. Like I'm never gonna like get there, so I should just keep working at it. So that's where I am, still working on it.
yeah, no, I mean, it's about the path and the journey, and there is really no destination, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, no, I feel the same. And actually, my mentors are similar. Martin Katz, for instance, who I worked a lot with when I was in Michigan, he was similar to Margot. That it always blew my mind that here was this person who was so esteemed and well known in our field and like at the top of the profession and who'd been teaching for decades was still taking Russian lessons and trying to learn new things all the time. I mean, it was a
Hmm.
lesson to me too. The journey is never done. Um, so I guess we should talk about our program. This program was the opening concert of the Collaborative Works Festival, which happened in person last week. We're broadcasting the festival throughout the next month, every Friday. And this Friday is the broadcast of our concert, which was the opening program of the festival called Songs of the New World. This year's festival, the theme was exploring, or is exploring, songs that have to do with the subject of immigration and migration. And this opening program was really all about the journey itself and kind of examining, juxtaposing new world composers with some old world greats. And so what was your experience like putting this program together? And kind of, when I sent you an email in the middle of the summer saying, here, would you like to learn all of this crazy repertoire and join us? What was that like?
Well, first, I was so excited and honored to be invited because I've been a longtime fan of CAIC. And so I've attended your festival every year and I've gone to as many concerts as I can. So it was so exciting to be on the other side of it. And I've always appreciated your thoughtful programming. So I knew you have put together an amazing program. And then I started to, study the music, and I had the order of the program always so that I could kind of get into your brain a little bit and see, what you were going for in terms of storytelling, and why does this song come after this song, and like where are we in this journey, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I get it, yeah, I see what Nick is doing here, and it was so exciting to sort of be kind of creating that together with you. Anyway, so yeah, I started researching and studying, and I've always followed Missy Mazzoli, and I love, the fluidity and lyricism of her music. And I love that, like, she wrote the text, and, that was cool. And we also talked about how in the refugee blues, even though the text is by W.H. Auden, and it talks about German Jews having to escape Hitler, the idea of refugees being shunned and sort of not finding home, still it's so relevant right now, whether you're talking about Afghans or Haitians or, Syrians, you just name it. And, but of course, discovering Ian Cousin's song cycle set to Joy Kogawa was such a personal moment for me. I actually did not know about Joy Kogawa, and I also hadn't heard of Ian's music, and it just felt so close to my heart. I loved Joy Kogawa's text because it is so authentically Japanese, the metaphors she uses, how poetic it's written, and just the painful experience she talks about in terms of Japanese Canadian internment camp and what they had to endure. And I was also reading her book, Obasan, which goes in more into details about the experiences. And, it just felt, like I said, very painful, very authentic, and just very close to my heart. And the way Ian Cousin used classical forms like fugue or passacaglia, but using Japanese folk tune Sakura, and we can talk about that soon in detail. But the way he used Western technique, but in a way that as a listener you wouldn't even notice that. Oh yes, I see that that's a passacaglia, or like maybe you heard the fugue, but like that's not what it's about. The way he incorporated that was just so masterfully done. It was just so, I don't know, I don't even want to say clever, like it was just, I don't know, it was just so organic. So I really enjoyed taking this journey.
The Ian Cousin cycle, for everybody who's watching or will be watching, is called Where There's a Wall, and you'll see it on Friday. And Yasuko played it amazingly. It is extremely difficult to play because it is very intricately put together. And Amanda Lynn Bottoms, the mezzo-soprano who performed it, was fantastic. But it's settings of these poems by Joy Kogawa, and 5 songs that detail this experience that she had as a child in Japanese internment camps. I would love for you to talk about Sakura and kind of his use of it and what it is for our audience who may not know the tune or what the tune signifies or is.
Right. Yeah. So Amanda is awesome. I have to do a shout out for Amanda for pulling that off, for learning it and embodying it and performing it I mean, it's so hard. But she was committed. She, you know, she got the job done. I mean, that girl, man. So kudos to you, Amanda. But in one of the rehearsals I had with Amanda, I remember it was that theme and variation, the chorale and variation, where it really, like, you can really hear the Sakura, the folk song. And of course, like, I know it because I grew up with it. But unless you knew the tune, you might not even hear it. It's not that obvious. But I remember telling Amanda, I love what Ian does. And I wish he had a new Sakura, because I think it's like a cop out. It's like Mount Fuji or Geisha. It's like the first tune people go to when they think, oh, I'm studying this Japanese text. I'm going to use a Japanese folk tune. How about Sakura? Right? But then I started to think about, what does Sakura signify? And cherry blossoms, Sakura, it's so beautiful. It's this tiny little flowers that coats these huge trees, and so it blossoms in like late March, early April throughout Japan. And because Japan's long island going from north to south like this, is like a cherry blossom, kind of like a weather forecast, like where it predicts when it's going to blossom on the news, on the local news, so that people can go see it when it's at the highest. And like it's a cultural thing, where we go see the cherry blossom, and we used to picnic underneath and like drink and party. And then we found out that it's hurting the roots, so now we're asked not to do that. But anyway, but what's beautiful about cherry blossom is not when it's blossoming, but it's when it starts to fall, like when the petals start to fall, and it looks like this snowflakes, those tiny little petals that just floats in the wind, and it falls to the ground. And it's the most beautiful thing because of impermanence, because this beautiful thing, even this beautiful thing, dies, but it'll come back next year. So it's about letting things go. It's about impermanence, but it's also about rebirth. And it's also about fragility. And so when you think about Ian Cousin choosing to use Sakura as a base for his composition, it kind of makes sense because of things lost during the Japanese internment, and because Joy Kogawa herself lost a lot of relatives, both in Japan and in Canada, because of the war. And so, yeah, so the impermanence and the fragility of Sakura, I thought was fitting.
Beautiful. You described that so eloquently. It's very moving. It's I don't know. There's another piece on the program, the Nico Muhly's Stranger, which was with the Avalon String Quartet, who they did a great job too. And I have a feeling that Where There's the Wall was also a Midwestern premiere, but I didn't confirm, so we didn't print it. But the Nico's piece is also a Midwestern premiere, and it's something he wrote for me that we premiered last year in Philadelphia in January, before everything shut down. And in it, the texts that he uses he takes these accounts of people who came through Ellis Island and sets that to music. And then he also takes these protest writings against Chinese exclusion, which was eventually expanded to all Asian exclusion. Those policies these writings are from the late 19th century. And performing it for me was a really interesting experience, because I don't think I've ever had the chance to relate so directly to any material I've ever performed. I think both as an American, but then also as a non-white American of Asian descent, there's always this hurdle that is there when approaching music. And I think, intellectually and like in my highest of minds, I know that, music is music, and we're here to perform these things to sort of show how its universality, and the universality of these human experiences. But I always have to sort of ask myself permission to do that. And I have to find sometimes these non-literal substitutes to sort of get into the emotional meat of something. But this felt so personal in a different way that, like, our German colleagues who sing German lieder, like I imagine that's how they feel when they get up to sing a Schubert lieder. And so for me, that was a really, this has been a sort of new awakening over the last year and a half. And it's been intense and liberating and wonderful in so many ways. And I'm just wondering if there's any of that for you with this, with Ian's piece and these settings of Joy Kogawa's poetry.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like I could get the colors I wanted on the piano because I knew exactly how that felt, you know, like what kind of color, what kind of emotion. Um, yeah, it wasn't like talking about the Greek gods, you know, like it's a little bit more directly like it yeah, it affects me directly, right? So it's I can access it
Right.
more immediately, I guess.
And there's no like, I mean, there's no sort of white person proxy in between, right? Like in a story like Madame a Butterfly, like that is the story about Japan that's told through, you know, a white man's or two different white men's sets of eyes. Whereas this, like these poems by, I mean, they're by a Japanese Canadian woman, you know, it's,
Mm-hmm.
there's a directness there. And I don't want to imply that something else is inauthentic, but inauthenticity to, you know, that expression.
Yeah, and it is different. I think it is okay to use the word authenticity, you know, because I mean, I don't know if you talked about it, but I have worked on like an opera that dealt with the Japanese interment, but it was written by a white female librettist and it was composed by a white male composer. And it did feel a little forced, and the libretto, especially like some of the references weren't correct, you know, and only a Japanese person would understand the seasonal references, the, you know, yeah, like all that nature metaphors that poets like to use, like unless you are Japanese or Asian, I mean, like, or maybe let's just start with Asian. um, there were some things that were missed, you know, and I felt a little offended, to be honest. I'm not gonna lie. But Joy Kogawa's text just really hit hard for me because it was right. It was authentic. It was something a Japanese person would say, and I think it's important to keep it real, you know. I think it is important for the Japanese to talk about Japanese experience, for Koreans to talk about Korean experience, and like, and for African Americans to talk about their experience. You know what I mean? I think that's okay, and I think it's okay for us to own that.
Yes, yes, 100% agree.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting time for these topics, which is
Mm-hmm.
great because I feel like we're actually having a robust discussion, or we're trying to have a robust discussion when we're not so busy pushing each other into corners of false binaries. But so let's chat a bit about Pilgerweise.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I loved, one of my favorite moments in rehearsal was you confessing to me that you were really not sure why I was drawn to the song because it's not your favorite Schubert song, which that is an opinion I will have to confess is shared by many. um, so let's just, I mean, do you mind sharing why, like why you initially thought that? And, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I thought the text by Schubert just goes on too long, and I just had a really hard time connecting to the text and to the song. And I knew there was a reason why you chose that song and why you placed it there. And when you talked about how a refugee like had so little with them, right? And then in the text in the Schubert song, the protagonist talks about, I can offer you my music, and that's all I have. And it sort of, you know, he heard. I was like, oh, I get it now. I get it. This is kind of like the experience I had at the refugee camp in Greece. So back in 2019, in the summer, I had the opportunity to go visit Greece, and part of that trip included a visit to Moria, which is a refugee camp on the island of Lesbos. And Lesbos is actually very close to Turkey. You can like see it from Lesbos, and it's sort of the entry point for a lot of the refugees from all over Afghanistan, Syria, African countries. Anyway, and unfortunately, a lot of refugees get stuck on Lesbos and have a very hard time making it to their destination, which is usually like Germany, Austria, or so I had a friend who had worked with this wonderful organization from Holland called Connect by Music, and that organization brings music lessons to the refugees, children especially, but adults too. And they teach guitar, ukulele, they have keyboards, and they're in this like tiny little like container, you know, boxes, and that's the classroom, because this refugee camp was originally built for 3,000 people, and at the time when I went to visit, they had about 13,000 people stuffed into that refugee camp. A lot of people were living in tents outside of the camp where there's no water, no electricity. People are divided by, you know, by sex, age group, and they're like, you know, barbed wires everywhere, security everywhere, people get murdered, you know, horrible living conditions. But we gave concerts. So I went with my husband, who's a cellist, and I also went with Kostis Protopapas, who's Greek. He's a conductor. He's also a pianist. He plays some piano too, and Kathy Dunn. His, I guess I can now say former wife. But anyway, I don't know the status right now. But so Kathy sang. We brought our daughter, who at the time was only 7 years old, and you know, people were a little worried. Did you really want to bring your daughter? And I was like, I want her to see this, you know. And she also sang with us, and it was great. But what was really touching, though, wasn't so much that we performed the music and we shared the music with them, which they thanked us so much. I mean, it was a hot day. It was in August, you know, we're outside, and everyone came and sat down and sat through the concert and, you know, applauded so loudly. And, you know, they really appreciated what we did, which was great. But after the concert, so this group of teenagers, boy teenagers, they formed a circle and started singing their Afghan songs. So there was this one refugee who had brought this Afghan instrument, I think it's called taboo. It looks like a lute, kind of. And, you know, I'm sure he couldn't take that much with him when he was escaping Afghanistan. But one thing he brought with him was this instrument. And Taliban at the time wasn't allowing music at all. So I don't know how he even learned to play on that instrument, but he was one of those few people who could still play this traditional Afghan instrument, and he brought it with him and he started playing. There was this also drum, and people started singing and dancing. And it was so moving. There was also this one moment when this West African guy was kind of pushed into the middle of the circle, and the other guys were like, yeah, just dance. And he's like, no, I don't know how to do this Afghan dance. And the boys were like, no, just dance. And they all danced together. And it was so beautiful. And I was just so moved, you know? And yeah, it was like they couldn't bring much with them, and they're still lost, and they're still in transit, and they're stuck in this refugee camp, but they have music to share. And they shared that music with us, and it was so beautiful, so moving. And Afghan music, folk music, has this modal. I don't know enough about it, but there's something about it that's so like haunting and just tugs on your heart. And it just, I was crying. So when you explained Pyogovaiza to me, I was like, that reminds me of this experience I had, and now I know how to play the song.
It's yeah. I mean, it's funny. I was amazed at that moment in rehearsal because that was the general idea of what drew me to that song. And this sort of like you have this music with you, and we placed it in the program right after a song called Chinaman Laundryman, which is all about how horribly a Chinese immigrant is treated in the United States working in a laundromat. And it I don't know. I mean, it just this idea that that journey never ends necessarily, but still, you always have your music with you, and that's the thing that you have to offer. And because of that, it has such value to you, even though it may not seem like it has value to the people you try and share it with. And you share that story, and I just thought this is exactly what, like, why I was drawn to the song. This was the sort of sentiment, and I don't know. I have to say, your sharing of the story really inspired our rehearsal after that. Like, I mean, it just, to me, it just kind of made me want to dig deeper into the those aspects of the song, which kind of changed the way I was thinking about some phrases. And I don't know, the song actually is a real highlight for me on the program because it was one of the things I think we discussed the most, and I feel like it had the greatest journey in terms of us coming together and you sharing this beautiful story where it captures the sentiment of this song that was written hundreds of years ago, and it informing us. Like, I don't know, it's really incredible. And the other thing that I love about the story is that in your case, this gift of music meant so much to you. I mean, you're carrying this story with you because of that, and you went to go share your own music. So I mean, there's something you understood about that. I don't know, it's a very moving thing, and I really appreciate you sharing that story with us here on the show. I should say to everybody, if you have questions on Facebook and you're watching, please put them in the chat. We're going to continue to talk, but just go ahead and shoot those in as we sort of near the tail end of our conversation in these last, I don't know, 15 minutes. I would love to know, do you have other thoughts on this subject matter in general that you like, the subject matter of immigration and migration and sort of how it related to the songs that you want to share with us in general?
Well, I think I love how relevant it is. Even though these pieces were written decades ago, if not like hundreds of years ago, the idea of people having to immigrate, like no one wants to leave their home country. No one wants to uproot themselves and start over. But yet they have to because of painful circumstances. And yeah, the fact that it's so relevant, I think it's just, I don't know, I just wanted to thank you for programming this program, for inviting our audience to experience the journey and to keep talking about this subject, right? Because yeah, it's not just news on CNN, like I think we all need to talk about it, and we all need to have compassion and empathy for what others go through. And I think we all try to help out in our small ways, see if we can make any difference, because at the end of the day, what we all want is we want to love our family, and we want our children to grow up. And there was also this beautiful moment at the refugee camp in Greece where my daughter had fallen asleep on my lap because it was a hot day and it was tiring. And the Afghan children were singing this beautiful song for us, and I was listening, and she fell asleep on my lap. But then they wanted to do group photo, and they were trying to invite me, and I was just like, I don't know, like she's on my lap and I don't want to wake her up. And so then this Afghan mom came over. She did not speak a word of English. She just pointed to my daughter in her lap, and we just knew exactly what to do. And so she sat down, and I like slid my daughter to her lap, and my daughter kept sleeping, and I was able to take this group photo for the organization. It was beautiful, and that just shows me that we all want the same thing. We just want to be able to love our family. And I don't know, the xenophobia, the homophobia, the whole horrible things I hear in the news. I'm just like, people, these are just people. I mean, like, we're all same people. We all want to love each other and our family to be safe. And why can't we all just do that?
Amen. Amen. I mean, I really appreciate that you appreciated the through line of the program, because it's, I don't know, I feel always like our job as artists is to be able to create a space for conversation, and for that conversation to shift the focus of the conversation from maybe the politics to the humanity
Mhm.
of the situation. And you're speaking so eloquently about that, and I mean, it shows in your playing too, and I have to thank you for that. um we do have a question.
Yay, question.
The question is, what kind of work is coming up for you, and do you have any art song collaborations on the horizon or desires on the horizon?
Well, I love art songs. This year, my year is a little opera heavy. And what I hate about being involved in so many operas, as exciting as it is that it's very time consuming. All the rehearsals, that the periods it takes, like weeks, So what's next for me is that, I'll be back at Lyric to work on Florencia and Eros Amazonas by CAIC, which I am so excited that a Mexican composer's opera is being performed at the Lyric. And it has a great cast. Ana Maria Martinez is singing, and the orchestration just so beautiful. It soars with all this beauty. So I'm really excited about that. I'm also going back to Des Moines Metro Opera to do another workshop for this opera that we're premiering next summer. It's called Thousand Acres. It's a novel, it's a Pulitzer Award winning novel by Jane Smiley. It's about a farm in Iowa. So how fitting for Des Moines Metro Opera. So Kristen Custer from University of Michigan is composing, and Mark Campbell is the librettist for that. So that's also very exciting to be creating something new. And after that, I'm doing a Christmas show at Chicago Opera Theater, Becoming Santa Claus by Mark Adamo. And then after that is Fire Shut Up in my Bones at Lyric. And then I'm also doing another premiere at COT by Erilyn Wallen, whose song we performed on Thursday night's concert last week. She's writing a new opera called Comino's Map, I think. So it's a little opera heavy, unfortunately, because I would like to have more art songs in my life, and I would like to do more chamber music performances. I coach a lot of chamber music at Northwestern, and that's always fun to tell students what to do. Like, listen to each other. So yeah, I guess that's a long answer to.
No, it's a great answer. It sounds like you have a lot of exciting things coming up, even though it's all mostly in the opera house. Erilyn, when you get a chance to work with her, she's a magical being. I hope she comes to be part of the rehearsal process. I'm sure she will. She's just an extraordinary woman, and a beautiful composer, as you obviously discovered and know. We have another question. This one is just, what's on your wish list in terms of art songs? Are there things that you're dying to do, or you haven't done yet and you're hoping to do?
Gosh, like, what's important to me more than the repertoire is who I work with, So I loved working with you, Nick, and I loved working with Amanda. I love to work with singers who are not afraid of taking risks, who are going to dedicate themselves to the text and go there. That it's not about making pretty sound. It's not about, I don't know. I will say there are singers who kind of specialize in opera and they're really good at doing opera, but they're really afraid of doing art songs. Or they're not as good on it. I don't know. I can't say these things. But so I love it when I have a great partner to work on it, dig in and talk about it and perform and make magic happen. To me, that's more important than what repertoire it is, you know. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I like any repertoire. I like making different colors, different textures. I mean, I don't know. I'll do anything if it's art song. I love art songs, and there just aren't enough in my life right now. So I'm very hungry for it.
Well, we have to make sure you get more
Yes.
in your life through us, with us. I have to say, I have, you know, we've known you for, I've known you for so long now, and I've been just, you know, your husband played with us, I think, on our second festival. You know, so like, I've been dying to get you to CAIC for a long time, and I'm so glad that it worked out this time, and I'm so grateful that you came. We always end these little spiels, or I always do when it's my turn to host, with two questions. The first is, what do you see as the future of the vocal recital? And the second is, why do you think song is important?
Okay. I will answer the second one first. Songs are important because it's such an intimate journey that we take with the audience. It's so, I mean, yeah, it's very intimate. It is like one person show, what, two people, I guess I'm playing the piano, but you know, it's not like opera where there's costume and directors and like multiple people on stage. It's just one person standing there singing. And the powerful journey you can take with songs is so special. Only our songs can do that. Opera cannot do that. I'm sorry. So that's why it's important to keep performing art songs and, you know, and spread the love, you know, of this art form. Future of art songs. You know, people are very visual. I feel like the reason opera does better than symphonies, orchestra concerts, is because of the visual aspect. There's costume, there's sets, there's dancers, you know, there's a lot to see. And I just wonder if we can be incorporating more visual things with art songs. I love it when there are like dancers choreographed to like a song cycle. Like, you know, it doesn't need to be that many dancers. It could just be like two dancers. I kind of love it when our song gets staged so that there's more immediate, accessible, you know, component other than just looking at the translation and trying to like digest a lot of information all at once. So whether it's projection or dancers or staging, I think it could be more visual. But I think it still needs to be intimate. It still needs to be in small recital halls.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I agree with you on all fronts.
Yeah, make it happen, Nick.
Yeah, well, you know, we've tried in the past and we'll try again. And it's just a matter of, you know, if anybody wants to donate thousands of dollars out there.
That's right.
Those visual aspects happen, we are ready to receive them. But no, I agree. Like, we are so visual, and it, you know, it's, I have been playing around with it. And I mean, we did a few festivals ago. I think you probably would.
Yeah, Janacek, I remember.
Janacek and the Schoenberg, we kind of, we incorporated visual elements, and I know that we definitely want to do that again. There was another Leader Lounge at one point where it was sort of semi-staged and built around the Willa Cather novel. Oh my gosh, the name is escaping me, but it's about a singer, it's about a pianist who plays for singers in Chicago. Oh, the name is going to come to me. And then, yeah, so I mean, I'm with you on this, and it's one of these things where, like, I feel like it's such a playground, right? Like, there's so much opportunity for experimentation as long as you have the resources and the time, and artists like you who are adventurous and flexible. Thank you so much for being with us today on this. I'm just going to do a little closing business here, and thank you one more time in 1 second. But thank you also, everybody, for tuning in. Oh, you have a comment from Michael Hall. Yasuko is an amazing musician and person, and I 100% agree with that. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in and watching us today. And if you missed it and you joined us in the middle, this will be up in perpetuity, so please watch the archive. We will be back this season with more Heard Over the Piano episodes. We're actually coming back next week on Wednesday at 7 p.m. Central with pianist Ronnie Michael Greenberg, and we're going to preview the second festival concert. But before that, this Friday at 7 p.m., October 15th, we will be doing the broadcast premiere of the opening concert of the 2021 Collaborative Works Festival. Songs by Missy Mazzoli, Erilyn Wallen, Mohammed Fairuz, Ian Cussin, Schubert, and the Midwestern premiere of Nico Muley's new song cycle, Stranger. So please join us October 15th here or at our website or at our YouTube channel to watch the premiere of that concert. And if you can't make it on Friday, that's going to remain available online for on-demand streaming until the evening of October 21st. Yasuko, thank you so much for your beautiful playing and sharing your artistry with us and sharing your thoughts with us tonight. And thank you everybody for joining in, and we hope to see you again very soon.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Bye, everybody.